Welcome back to Shut Down Not Shaken, a special mini-series of the At Ease podcast, where I give you an episode every single day during the government shutdown. I'm your host, Cristin Candace, and today's conversation is about something we've all been living through together, whether we've named it or not: grief. Not just the kind that comes with losing someone we love. I'm talking about the layered, ongoing, and often silent grief that comes with being a Black woman in America. Watching systems we once trusted crumble, seeing communities we love carry loss after loss, and still trying to show up as if we're fine. Let's just talk about some of the things that have happened in the last couple years. Even in the last few months, over 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs. Corporate DEI programs, the ones that promise safety, belonging, and commitment to equity, are being dismantled, one press release at a time. Education, healthcare, and other spaces where we found purpose are now battlegrounds for political agendas. And through it all, many of us are grieving the illusion of progress, grieving the loss of stability, grieving the constant fight to prove our humanity in spaces that still hesitate to see it. But grief, when we allow it to, can also be a teacher. And that's what this episode is about. What grief teaches us about grace. There's a really powerful article that I came across by Demir Wilson and Mary Frances O'Connor titled "From Grief to Grievance." It argues that our current definition of grief, the acute pain that accompanies the loss of a loved one, is far too narrow. And I agree. For Black Americans, grief is not just personal, it's collective. It's historical, it's systemic. We grieve not only people, but possibilities. Not just family members, but a sense of safety. Not just one tragic headline, but the ongoing pattern of loss that shapes our very existence. When we say names like Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, we're naming both lives and legacies, and the collective ache that comes with watching history repeat itself. And that collective grief lives inside our bodies, our nervous systems, our choices. It shapes how we love, how we work, and even how we rest. Dr. Tashelle Bourdier wrote, "Grief will always be prolonged as long as injustice is prolonged." And when I think about that, it makes sense that so many of us feel tired in ways that sleep can't fix. So this is where I want to pause and invite you, the listener, to reflect on your own story. And I'll share one of mine. Those of you who do not know me, I am the oldest daughter of 3. I am the oldest granddaughter, and I lost my mom January 16th, 2024. It wasn't a surprise. We knew that she was sick. And I've shared that I did everything within my power to make sure that I maximized the time that I had with her. For context, I am not new to loss. There was a time when I remember in late elementary school, middle school, and even early in my high school years, I felt like my family was constantly experiencing loss. Both of my parents grew up in Jersey, and I remember always being on the highway back and forth on Route 80 to go to funerals. And there was a time in life where I thought I had grief down. Like I knew how to handle loss, whether it was losing friends in college suddenly, um, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. I thought I kind of had grief figured out. And then I lost my mom. And I don't know how I thought I was going to react or respond, but there was a level of emptiness that I cannot even, and I'm saying there is a level of emptiness that I cannot even begin to describe. After losing my mom, I realized that grief, it's not just about what's gone or what you no longer have. It's about what's trying to grow in the soil that remains. And what do I mean by that? I talked about collective grief and knowing that we're not grieving alone, and in losing a loved one, it's the same, right? Something that I had not considered in losing a parent was the fact that I also have children, which made this very different from times when I have had to grieve before. I found myself having to explain to two 5-year-olds where their grandmother was, why she wasn't coming back, and trying to help them process while also trying to process my own grief, trying to move through and grow in that soil that remained, realizing that I actually wasn't in the soil by myself, and that um, my responsibilities looked different in this grieving process. And so that grief really slowed me down, but it reintroduced me in a way to what truly matters. It taught me to let go of a pace that I had created and to really sit down and be present and be in the moment. I had to be with my children and still have to be with my children from time to time when they have a moment of, where's Cece? I miss Cece. I can't skirt past that. I give them space to cry, to question, and I have to give myself the same in order to be okay to be there for them. And so there's a collective grieving that I do with my sons that we do together. And the only way to do that is to slow down and be present with each other in those moments. Wilson and O'Connor describe how grief amongst Black Americans often transforms into grievance, not in a sense of a complaint, but in the sense of righteous awareness. Think about it. Anger and sorrow are often two sides of the same coin. When Dr. King delivered the eulogy for the 4 girls killed in the Birmingham church bombing, he turned grief into a collective call to action. And that's what happened again in 2020 when the world watched George Floyd's murder. Our mourning became movement. And yet in the years since, we've seen that movement commodified, diluted, and dismissed. We've watched DEI jobs eliminated and promises of equity fade from corporate slideshows. So here's what I'm learning. Grief may begin with sorrow, but grace begins in how we choose to respond. Grace asks, how do I honor what I've lost without losing myself in the process? One way that I have chosen to honor my mother is to make sure that I'm creating more joy. My mother loved to dance. She loved to dance. And that is actually something we enjoyed doing together. We loved dancing. And so on her first heavenly birthday, I went and took a dance class. When I do a line dance, I think about her and how I know she would have been right next to me, killing it on the dance floor. I also think about the ways in which I know she sacrificed herself and her joy, and knowing how painful that was for me as her daughter to think about the things that she missed out on or didn't get to experience. And so I also allow myself to do those things. When I think about the trip, I'm going to take it. When I think about homecoming, I'm going. If I want to be silly in the moment and bust out into a dance or song, I'm going to do it because life is short and I deserve some grace. I also deserve to experience joy. And that's what grief does. It teaches us about grace. It can look like slowing down. It may look like not performing resilience for systems that never made space for my rest. It could look like giving myself permission to be unproductive and still worthy. Grief teaches us that control is an illusion, but compassion, especially for yourself, is a choice. It reminds us that survival and softness can coexist, that rest and joy are not betrayals of your struggles. When you give yourself grace, you're not forgetting what happened. You're remembering who you are. And in remembering, you are healing. So here are a few practices I've found helpful, and maybe they will resonate with you too. Name your losses. Write them down. Not just the people, but the dreams, the routines, the versions of you that no longer fit. Allow for pause. Grief changes your internal clock. Give yourself permission to move slower, to say no, to take a breath before you respond. Lean into community, whether through family, your sister friends, therapy, or a spiritual practice. We don't have to grieve in isolation. And invite joy back in. Joy is not disrespectful to loss. It's what reminds us we're still alive. As a note, in my mom's final moments, the air was thick. You could cut the tension with a knife. And she had like a Google speaker that sat on her nightstand. And I just said, "Hey, Google," I don't know what I said play. It might have been Phyllis Hyman. It might have been Tina Marie. Whatever it was music that she enjoyed. And it completely shifted the energy in the room. It wasn't a joy to see her leave this earth, but we could have joy while also simultaneously experiencing pain. So invite joy back in. Joy is not disrespectful to the loss. It reminds us, and even in that moment, it reminded us that we were still alive. And it actually empowered us to start sharing memories, memories of my mother. Give yourself grace. Grace isn't about perfection. It's about permission to feel, to fall apart, and to begin again. And some of us might be thinking about that. We might be thinking about what if, right? What if you've lost your job? What if the world, the government may never look the same? What if we do have to start over? And I offer that you can start over with your dreams. Start thinking about what could it look like. Give yourself permission to fall apart, begin again, and feel good again. As Black women, we carry both personal and collective grief, often without acknowledgement and often without rest. But we also carry the capacity to transform that grief into grace. So maybe the question isn't how do we move on? Maybe it's how we move through with compassion and community and with care for ourselves and others. Because grief doesn't just break us open, it makes room for more truth, more tenderness, and more faith. And that, my friends, is grace. Thank you for listening to this episode of Shut Down, Not Shaken. If this conversation resonated with you, share with your sister who's carrying more than she can say out loud. And remember, you deserve rest, you deserve joy, you deserve grace. Until next time, stay at ease. And if the government is still shut down, I will see you tomorrow.